So I'm Carly Swanson. I'm one of the reading specialists here at Mount Daniel.
And I'm Phyllis Kravinsky. I'm the other reading specialist.
So today we're going to talk about the Virginia Literacy Act, which is a new law that went into effect this year and is affecting how we teach students literacy. We're going to talk about what structured literacy is, and also Amplify CKLA, which is the literacy program that we are using at Mount Daniel this year and at Oak Street. So the Virginia Literacy Act is a law that says that every teacher is going to use evidence-based literacy curriculum, ours is Amplify CKLA, and assess student learning using a literacy screener, and that literacy screener is called the Virginia Language and Literacy Screening System, also known as VALS. I'm sure you've heard about that and gotten VALS reports home. So that's our statewide universal screener. Students, we're going to use our student data to inform instruction and intervention. And our teachers are participating in evidence-based literacy instruction training to make sure that they are, have the most up-to-date information to better serve our students.
All right. So we're going to do a little bit of teaching parents how children learn the foundational skills of literacy, because we think it's really important to understand that in order to understand the curriculum that we're using, because we have made some shifts in the past few years, all based on the research of how children learn to read. Here at Mount Daniel, this is, to me, where the magic happens. This is where foundational literacy starts. They go from, in many cases, having very little knowledge of letters and sounds to being able to really read here. So it's amazing, but I think sometimes it's important for parents to understand like what's happening and how that ties into our curriculum. So we're using something called structured literacy, and when you get these slides, there's some more information about it. But it's based on the research of how children learn literacy, and you're emphasizing that teaching foundational literacy skills needs to be systematic and explicit. That means, explicit means we're not walking around the school looking at A's and sort of discovering what sound it makes, because it makes a lot of sounds. We are saying at the beginning, A says ah. We are explicitly teaching children the sounds that letters make and how to take those sounds and blend them into words. They get a lot of practice. It's very fun. We have lots of ways of making it engaging, but it's explicit because, you know, the basics literacy is not, there's not a lot of discovery needed. M says, let's move on and we can talk about what says, but. So that's the explicit side of it. Systematic means that we build from the very basics, again, that M says, to more and more complicated like phonics patterns, or even at the comprehension, like basic comprehension ideas, and it builds and becomes more and more complicated. But you start at what's within their grasp, and then you move. So you're going to do the short sound of a vowel, ah, before you start teaching them the different ways that the letter A can say A. So we move from the very basic to the more complex as we go through the grades. So that's what structured literacy, when we say, that's what it means when we refer to that, right?
Yeah.
So this complicated reading rope, any of your child's teachers will be able, we talk about the reading rope a lot. And basically it's a model to try to help us understand the things that need to be in place for children, or anyone really, to become a fluent reader that understands what they're reading. Because sometimes it might look like we're just kind of getting into sounding out words, but our ultimate goal over here is skilled reading, which is fluently reading and understanding what you read. But in order to be able to do that, children need to have what we call the word recognition side of the rope, which includes understanding how sounds work, syllables, the sounds in words, being able to decode words that are decodable, using those sounds and matching them to the letters, and then being able to recognize quickly a lot of words. So that's the being able to just recognize the words. That's that side of the rope. I'm sharing all this with you because our curriculum is based on this. The other side of the rope is the language comprehension side, which is incredibly rich. That means your background knowledge, your vocabulary. If you read the word mud, that's easy to read, but if you don't know what mud is, it doesn't make any sense. So you need background knowledge, you need vocabulary, you need to understand how sentences work, because a lot of times that will help you read. If you read a sentence incorrectly, if the grammar or the syntax is wrong, sort of your innate understanding, if you have it, of syntax will lead you to go back and try to correct that. Understanding what's inferred in a text, what a metaphor means. These are all really complicated that even our kindergartners, many of them already come to school with. They just don't know this language for it. And then your understanding of print concepts, you know, that we go left to right, top to bottom. A lot of these are powerful reasons for why we tell parents, especially when kids are just starting to read to your child. It's almost more important at home than your child reading when they're just learning how to read, because all of this information is going to come to them through your speaking and your reading to them. They can understand much richer texts, and this is in whatever language your home language is, much richer texts than they can read, especially in kindergarten and early first grade. So the read alouds that we do in school and the read alouds that you do at home are where they're going to, we teach this, but a lot of it is also absorbed through your environment. So those are the two parts of the reading rope, and you know, they're kind of fragmented when they get started, especially down here, and the more we teach and practice, they hopefully will be twined together until at the end, like I said, we have skilled and fluent reading.
And I just want to throw in there too, so in our curriculum, our curriculum has two parts here at Mount Daniel. It has the knowledge strand and the skills strand. So that's really why we emphasize this, because we have skills, right, where we're working on that word reading, and we have that knowledge strand where we're working on that language comprehension piece. Oops. Oh no.
You went too far.
I clicked on my link so you can see the reading ladder. Okay, so this is the ladder for reading and writing, and we just want to give you the opportunity to kind of see why we do this the way that we're doing it and why there's been the shift in the way we teach reading. So just like Larkin was talking about earlier, there's going to be some of our students who are going to get reading just like that. It's going to look like it's automatic, right? And then there's going to be a big chunk of our students that need explicit instruction. So 35 to 40% of our students will read relatively easily, but they need some explicit instruction to help them get there. Then we're going to have 40 to 45% of our students who will learn to read, but it's going to require a very code-based explicit instruction model. And then we're going to have a small percentage of our students, that's that 10 to 15%, that are going to need very explicit, intensive instruction to learn with frequent repetition, to learn those literacy skills. And so what we know is explicit instruction is what's best for all of our kids. So that's why that's something that we're doing in all of our classrooms.
So we can talk about this just a little bit more too. As Larkin was showing you the pyramid with the students that receive core instruction. So all of our students receive, as just like in math, our core instruction, which we'll talk about some more. Some of these here might be what we call tier 2, and that's based on that Virginia literacy screener that we talked about earlier. And we have meetings and we decide these students need a little bit more. They need a little more attention from their teacher in the classroom. And then down here, again, based on that Virginia literacy screener, these are what we're going to call tier 3. They may be receiving their literacy support extra. Again, they're going to receive the tier 1. They might receive some extra from their special education teacher if they have an IEP, or they'll receive it from Miss Swanson or I in a small group pull-out reading. So just wanted to kind of tie that to that same tiered system to support model that we have in math. We also have it in language arts.
All right, let's see if it'll go. It really just
You
wants
want
to
to show
click.
everybody that.
It really wants to click there. Let me see if I can.
Well, there
get
are
this
links
in.
here so that if you want to
There we
dig
go.
into these things a little bit more.
Yes, we are big nerds about literacy, so we got lots of great resources for literacy there. So another part of this model is the 4-part processing model, and this kind of shows you like how the brain learns to read. And when I saw this for the first time, I was like, oh, this makes sense. So I feel like it's good information to share with parents to like kind of show you behind the curtain what's happening in our kids' brains when they're learning how to read. So the first thing that happens is our students are going to look at the letters, right? And they're going to see those letters, and then they're going to match them to sounds. So orthographic is the writing, and phonological is the sound. So they're going to see the letters, and they're going to need to pull the sounds. In a skilled reader, this happens almost simultaneously. They see those letters, they know the sounds. In our students who need extra support, it doesn't happen simultaneously. They have to look at the letter and go, oh, that's a B. Okay, what sound does that say? Oh, that says B. Okay, now let me move to the next one. Okay, that's an A. That says A. And that process can really slow them down, right? When this part right here is not automatic. So that's where we spend a lot of our time.
And I would say especially in kindergarten, even typically developing students, that's a learned process for most students.
Right, and it takes explicit instruction to make that process automatic. So then after you've gotten to the point where you're like, okay, that's bat, then your meaning processor gets triggered. So it's like, oh, I know 2 meanings of the word bat. I wonder which one is being used in this sentence or in this context. And then your context processor gets triggered to be like, he hit the ball with the bat. Oh, okay, that must be the bat like that I used to swing. And so that's what's happening in our students' brains when they're trying to read. There's a lot of processes that need to happen quickly in order for fluent reading to happen. So we train students on all of those parts of the 4-part processor. There we go.
So as Carly said earlier when we were looking at the reading rope, and this is part of why we wanted to share that with families, is we've adopted, we went through the same process that math is going through this year, and we adopted a program called Amplify Core Knowledge Language Arts. That's what that stands for, right? We just call it CKLA all the time, so I'm like, what does this letter stand for? And it is divided into 2 strands. So the teachers are teaching skills, where they're teaching that word recognition, the bottom part of that rope, so where children are automatically, hopefully, learning how to read words quickly. And they're also going to be talking about the understanding what the word means during those skills lessons. But that's what that is. And that's heavy at Mount Daniel, because we want them to leave Mount Daniel with as much of this automatic as possible. By 3rd grade, hopefully they're not having to do a lot of decoding. And then there's also another strand, which is a knowledge strand, where they're working on vocabulary and that comprehension, the background knowledge. The students love this. It's, and we're going to show you a lot of the units in a minute, but it's really building that background knowledge through some really engaging thematic units that has much richer vocabulary and concepts than they could read about. And it's really pretty fun to see the things that they're doing in those units. Hopefully some of that is coming home. So that is how the curriculum is built, and it's built to go back to that reading rope.
It also uses what we call a sounds first approach. So in that skills strand in kindergarten, students start with letter sounds, which is a shift for us. Normally in our instruction, we start with letter names, right? But the research has shown us that what students need to be skilled readers is they need those sounds. And sometimes it can be confusing to get to that sound piece when we introduce the names first. So that's why in kindergarten we're starting with sounds, because sometimes, H does not have the sound anywhere in it, right? And so that can be confusing to students when they go to sound out a word. They're like, oh, that's H, but that doesn't help them with figuring out what that sound says to read that word.
Or
so,
Y, which starts with the W sound.
Yep.
But doesn't say what.
Yep, so tricky, so tricky. So that's why we've been starting with this sounds first approach. So when they see a letter, they're going to say, oh, instead of M. And we encourage that. We're like, yep, that letter says and focusing on those sounds. It's also really important as teachers that we articulate those sounds correctly for our students. Oftentimes when we're saying sounds, particularly like loudly, we'll say like buh, right? But then when you go to sound out a word, having that schwa, that sound, can really confuse a student because then they're like buh at, and that can make it harder to get to bat. So as much as we can encourage our students to clip those sounds, B says b as opposed to buh, the better off we are. So that's why we use that sounds first approach.
This is busy, so when you see it in the handout, it'll make more sense. But we wanted to show you how CKLA, because it is a K-5, our K-5 language arts program. So the things that they are learning in kindergarten, the themes in the knowledge units are repeated in a more sophisticated manner as they go throughout the grades. So they might do the 5 senses in kindergarten, and then they're going to do the human body in first grade, the human body in second grade, but it's going to get more and more complex again in third grade, and then geology and chemical matter. Probably would have failed that part, but anyway, the great thing is when they do the human body in first grade, some of the groundwork for that information, that background knowledge for that unit was set in kindergarten. So by the time they get to 5th grade, each of these units has built, and they're coming with more and more background knowledge. One of the things that we know is that some of our students have a great deal of background knowledge from their home environment, and some of them have less. And we want to build a level playing field of background knowledge and vocabulary, because first of all, because it's equitable, and secondly, because as we saw in that reading rope, that background knowledge and vocabulary really contributes to understanding what you read. So CKLA is really built to build that at school as well as whatever they get from home. So I just really am excited about that part of, and you can see the colors. The green is all literature based. The purple is science, and the blue is history. They're not specifically teaching science and history SOLs in those units. They're using science and history to teach literacy concepts while also building background knowledge in those areas that will support students in other parts of their school day.
So now we have some resources for you. These will all be linked when you get the slide deck. And some resources are from the state of Virginia. We have resources from our curriculum, Amplify CKLA. And then these are 2 other resources that we just think are really good for parents and have a lot of really great information. And please feel free to click around on this slideshow, because I linked a lot of stuff. There's a lot of research linked in there too to explain more of the why if you're interested. And always, you can reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns or want to talk about literacy. We are also extremely passionate about this and happy to chat. Do you guys have any questions?
Right now?
Yeah.
So the assessment, it had that yellow area, like moderate risk. I'm referring to my kindergartner. Is that just the extra in class with the teacher, extra, and then it's the next level where they would meet with you all?
Exactly.
Okay.
So that yellow is what we're taking right now is like a tier 2 support, where they would get some extra from their classroom teacher. Yeah.
And just like Larkin and Jen were saying earlier, how they have meetings to discuss the data for math, we also have the same structure for language arts, and we just actually went through a couple of them, like a month, where instead of meeting as a whole group to talk about the group of students, Ms. Swanson and I met individually with teachers specifically to talk about the students in the yellow, so that we could, help them with resources on how to help those students. And I mean, obviously they know they can ask us questions at any time. Carly and I work with the students who are in the red, so we have a lot of resources for extra support. So we are trying to meet with teachers and help them with that classroom piece. So if they have any questions or need extra resources, we can provide those. But yes.
And also, just like in math, Dreambox was the app that gets sent home in math. We have an app called Lexia, which also got sent home, and is a great resource to use with all kids to help build those skills. Yeah.
I'm curious about how the implementation is going. I know this is the first year with this, and I don't know, what was the resource before, the curriculum before you adopted?
So we had, I'm going to use the word collection. I've been doing this for a while, and I would say probably right around the pandemic, we really identified the need for this, I'm going to take a long answer to your question. We used a lot of balanced literacy, which meant we had word study, we had some units of study for writing, and then we used guided reading. And so we started to read all this research about how we needed a more explicit phonics program, and then this great information about using like read alouds to help build background knowledge and comprehension. So we started, I guess right after the pandemic, getting teachers trained in Orton Gillingham-based phonics instruction, our IMSEs. It's a very structured and explicit phonics program, and teachers loved it. And I think all of our teachers right now, except one, have that training. So we got all that done. So that's what we were doing before on the bottom side of the rope. And then the top side was sort of a little bit more of a, let's create some comprehension resources by grade level. The VLA, I think, really helped us because it forced us to put together, to adopt a program that had been vetted, again, by the state and our teachers. In terms of implementation, I mean, I'd say it's the first year. Some teachers are like, this is great. Other teachers struggle more. I think, as with all things in schools, one of our biggest challenges is time. There's a lot of resources in here, so we're kind of going through it this year. And then we're capturing like our glows and grows with the plan of adjusting it next year for the time piece. And also weaving in the OG training where we feel that CKLA needs a little boost. So.
And I think it's like we started out in a really amazing place because our teachers were the ones who were like, we want this training, we want structured literacy, we want more explicit instruction for our students. So even when our teachers might be struggling a little bit with our current program, it comes from a place of we want to do what's best for kids, and we know how to do that. We have a really rich teacher knowledge base, which I feel we're incredibly lucky to have. So teachers are really implementing CKLA to the best of their ability, knowing it's our first year, and supporting CKLA with their rich knowledge of what's best for kids.
And we really wanted to make sure that we used the program with fidelity and the assessment, because not only do we have a new curriculum, we have a new literacy screener. So we are all learning how that's going to play out over the year. And so, you know, we're gathering the data. We saw some great growth on the screener between the fall and the mid-year, and then we're hoping that that's the same at the end of the year. But we're going to have to really evaluate all of that data and teachers' experience to make tweaks. And I know I'm retiring, so I'm not in as much of the conversation, but I know that Carly and the rest of the literacy team are really looking at what has happened this year and how we're going to adjust whatever we need to adjust for next year. But.
Long answer.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate the long answer and for all that you're doing for
It's a year of growth, change.
We're happy
But
to.
they're
We love
digging in. They really are. And
yeah.
I think they're finding.
And I think we're pleasantly surprised,
Yeah.
too, with a lot of the skills that our kindergartners are working on now are typically skills that we would work on in first grade. So it's really cool to see how much our students are growing and how they're picking all of this up.
I think CKLA is a pretty, it's not slowing them down. It's actually a more accelerated, it's a little bit more accelerated than the Virginia standards require.
Yes.
So, which was great, especially for, a lot of our kids are ready. They're ready for more. And the ones that aren't, we have some things in place to sort of support them where they are.
Yeah. The rigor is there, for sure.
Sounds like this kind of meshes really well with the whole unique concept that the PYP IB program does, where you spread knowledge out through all the traditional subjects and you connect everything. It seems like it goes really well with that.
Absolutely. I think that our first year, it can feel a little overwhelming, right? Because we have these rich units, right, that we've already created to engage our students in inquiry, right? And now we have this like very rich knowledge strand, and we're like, whoa, this is a lot. But I think moving forward, one of our things that we're looking at as we look at our grows and glows from this year is how do we work these things together, to help them support each other, to make sure that, we are inquiry based and we are a PYP school and we do integrate that into everything that we do, and this provides a really cool opportunity for us to continue that and deepen it. Thank you guys.